evening, everyone. It is another special edition episode of Scarves and Spikes. I am Tyler Pilgrim, joined here by Sydney Hunt at SH Wrights for him, at ATL Pilgrim for me, as usual. Sydney, how you doing, buddy?
Good. I got some, as you can see, I got some new digs here behind me. As you all know, I was moving over the weekend, and that kind of threw my schedule a little bit out of whack. But I am settled in. I am officially a resident of Cobb County, Georgia. So, yeah.
All right. So, quick thing. Turn the camera. Give us the whole view.
Yes, and people on the
On the
podcast will
spot.
not see it, which is a very good reason to watch us via
Yes,
live stream if you are listening to the podcast only. But yeah, this is the view.
I like it.
And yeah, it's a nice
pretty.
place near Truist Park, about 10 minutes from the training ground. So
Oh, so you're you're in the heartland.
right
That's
in
perfect.
the heartland of Cobb County, my friend. But yeah,
Cool.
I am here, like I said, settled in, and yeah, good to be here.
Cool. I like the background. So we got a pretty full episode today, guys. We are going to have Jake Zivin of the Apple TV / MLS deal coming on. He is the partner broadcaster alongside Taylor Twellman. Gonna be coming on and chat with us about Nashville. We have a game that we've got to discuss.
Do we have to?
Unfortunately, it's best not to, but we're going to anyway.
We gotta.
So, yeah, we have to. We'll dive into that here in a minute. And besides that, the quick plugs, guys. We have a really exciting Patreon episode coming up as well. We have some other guests that are getting ready to come on our live show as well. But we do have a really cool Patreon episode coming up soon, and that's going to be recorded next week. And then it will go on Patreon, which is our Patreon is patreon.com/scarves and spikes. If you are watching live, it is at the top of the screen. If you are watching live as well and you can see the chat, it is over in the chat. And if you're not and you're listening after the fact on the Atlanta Soccer Podcast Network, then you can just rewind whatever I'm saying and go type it in on Google. So,
we at least gotta tell them who it is, though, right?
oh, I'm going to tell them who it is.
Get
It
this teasing
is.
to just say not say who it is, but go ahead. Let us know
It
who
is going to be Tony Annan, former Atlanta United head of the academy, and now South Carolina men's soccer coach. So he is kind of the one that got the Atlanta United Academy really off and running and pushed it in the direction that it is still going today. And it's going strong. And Tony deserves a lot of credit for everything he did
Yep.
while he was at Atlanta United, and still has a great relationship with the club. So really excited to have him come on.
Yeah, South Carolina itself, a very well-known program. Mark Burson was the first ever head coach of the program, and players like Brad Guzan went to South Carolina, Josh Wolf, I believe, Clint Mathis. So a lot of well-known players have gone to South Carolina and played men's soccer there. And again, Mark Burson essentially started the program, but now after his retirement, Tony Annan has taken over. I believe it's his second season, or not to go into the second season or third season, I forget which, as a head coach of South Carolina men's soccer. So really excited to talk to him and let him know, or find out from him how things are going in Columbia. Talk about the academy, his time with the academy with Atlanta United, and all of that. So really looking forward to that. Again, that is going to be only for patrons. So patreon.com/scarves and spikes. As Tyler said, it's in the chat if you're watching on the live stream. If you're listening on the podcast, just type it in. Subscriptions start at $5 a month, $10 if you really feel like donating that much. But yeah, I guess he asked us to the episode with Tony, and just a lot of other great stuff that we have for you in store right now, and other stuff that we're working on in the future. So again, patreon.com/scarves and spikes. As always, the live stream remains free. The player rating show remains free. But episodes like this with Tony are only for patrons. So yeah, patreon.com/scarves and spikes. And
Yeah.
with that, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I was just saying, and we're trying to line up guests as often as possible for you guys. We know you love the guests. We know you love hearing from other folks as well. And in the future, the near future, we are going to start having some fairly consistent, I think you can say, guests that are related to the Apple deal, the MLS deal, in some way, shape, or form. So look forward to that. That's going to be all on our show. It'll be weekly as much as we can make it happen. So, but yeah, we're excited. We're trying to bring you guys as much content as possible, whether it's here on the YouTube/Twitch/Twitter and over on Patreon. So super excited for it. We appreciate you guys supporting us. So,
all right, I think we've put it off long enough, Tyler. We got to talk about Wednesday night.
Yeah, just let's pull the tooth. All right. So yeah, I already see the comments. Bruno jumping in. Do we really need to talk about this game? Can't we talk about, I don't know, Taylor Swift and Janet Jackson concerts happening the same day? Yeah. Public service announcement. Don't drive in Atlanta anytime between like now and Sunday.
Don't go downtown this weekend. Just stay away from downtown this weekend.
Yeah.
Altogether.
Don't do it. There are people camping outside Mercedes-Benz Stadium already for this Taylor Swift concert.
Like, you have a ticket already. Why are you camping? I mean, it's not going to change where you sit. But anyway, that's another topic for another show.
It be what it be. So,
what it be.
All right, Fifth Third Bank Stadium last night was the home of a tragedy. And it is the first time Atlanta United has ever lost in Kennesaw in their existence. It is the second time they've ever lost to a lower division team. It is the earliest they've ever been knocked out of the Open Cup. I don't know what else to say other than it sucked. It sucked. The whole game was frustrating. You had
outside of the Tyler Wolff goal.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you know, you nick a goal 3 minutes in. Luis Araujo had a great ball. I remember we were there, right there in the press box, and when that ball left his foot, you knew it. You knew it was dead on. Tyler Wolff brought it down well. He slotted it past Bill Hamid, and you think, all right, well, we're off to a good start. But it was like a switch flipped, and that was it. There was nothing to show that was really a bright spot in any way, except for, and yeah, Bruno in the chat, and I know it's been all over Twitter, Clement Diop was outstanding.
Oh, gosh. Still in his head all night. Just, I was talking to Henry Higuita Jr., who was in the press box with us as well, and he made a good point. I mean, without Clement Diop, I mean, this match was probably like 3-1 or something like that.
If not more.
If not more. I mean, you just can't play like that against a opponent you should be. All respect to Stephen Glass and Memphis 901. They just wanted more. They had nothing to lose whatsoever. They go into an away environment, an environment that Glassy obviously is very familiar with, and they come away with the biggest win in their short history against a side that they should have lost to, let's be honest. And you could talk about rotation. You could talk about whether certain players should have started in that. You could talk about all of that. You could talk about maybe Pineda being out coached. Long story short, Atlanta United should have won this match. And again, no disrespect to Memphis 901, but you can't. And this is, Tyler, we've seen this with this team in the past few matches in MLS play. They score early, and they just fall asleep. We saw that against New York City. We saw this against Chicago on Sunday. Scored their first goal. Yakamaka scores, and they just don't assert themselves. They don't get that second goal. Chicago levels it. Of course, Atlanta win, but what if they didn't, you know? Toronto, early leads. You take leads against Toronto both times. You draw. New York City, down to 10 men, you score, but then you can see immediately after. Just matches like that. This is a team that should be at top of the Supporters' Shield race at this point, if not at top of the East, but they just shut off and they just shut down whenever they get a lead, and it's just very troubling. And last night, Wednesday night, it just bites them, you know where, and they end up losing the match. So this is something that, like I said, has been the pattern for this club. And we'll talk about Nashville later, obviously, but you can't play this way against Nashville and expect to win. Just really an inexcusable performance for Atlanta United against a second division opponent.
Yeah, it was lazy. You know, you had very minimal bright spots in this match for Atlanta. I think you actually struggle a little bit to really pick out like individual. Again, we talked about Clement Diop, but you struggle to pick out individual performances. I will say this: the eye test maybe not uh, withstanding here. But one player that actually I think did do well and probably isn't getting as much credit as he should was Franco Ibarra. And the reason I say that is because when you have Franco Ibarra out working very well, he's got a more competent and awake midfield pairing. And I think Franco Ibarra actually, I mean, he had 10 tackles last night. He was actually all over the field. It just didn't seem like it because nobody would win the second ball that he would initially win. He would come in for the tackle and win the ball, and he was doing it. That's what his job is. But there's nobody around him to win that second ball and move the ball up the field. And credit, because I see it in the chat too, credit to Memphis's midfield. Memphis's midfield was outstanding last night. They were very solid in the middle, and then you had wingers that just have speed. You talked about it last night. They're quick, and they ran all over Atlanta and they pressured them. I mean, you look at a team that had 12 corners last night against an MLS side, 30 shots.
30 shots on goal. What, 8 on target or something like that?
30 shots. I think it was 10 on goal.
10 on target? Good grief.
Just wild.
That can't happen.
No.
Against Memphis 901, against Nashville SC, against the Chicago Fire, whoever, it can't happen. Yeah, exactly.
Happen.
It's just so disappointing for Atlanta United to turn in that performance, especially after that goal by Tyler Wolff. And congrats to Tyler on his first goal with the first team, but ends up not mattering. And now we're having to talk about a loss to, again, I don't want to say an inferior opponent because Memphis were on a really good run, I believe, coming into this match. Again, nothing to lose. Steven Glass, obviously very familiar with Atlanta, but still the eye test says that if you're a first division side hosting a second division side, especially with the players that you have on the pitch, you have to win, and Atlanta United did it. And again, we could talk about rotation and all of that, but at the same time, the players you have on the field have to perform, and we didn't see that. So here we are talking about a loss to Memphis 901, a loss in the US Open Cup, and now a chance to win another trophy is off the table, and a chance to get to CONCACAF Champions League is off the table.
Yeah, as early as you got started, it's over. And y'all have heard me say it before, but the Open Cup is the most direct route to a trophy. It's the most direct route to Champions League. You play the least amount of games to get the Champions League by winning the Open Cup. And you never want to go out against a lower division side by any means. And this is not taking anything away from Memphis because Memphis did very well. They're unbeaten now, I think now in 5. And Glassy's really getting them on board with what he's trying to do. But as far as Atlanta is concerned, because, the quotes last night, and you guys can check my quotes article over on dirtysouthsoccer.com. But the quotes article and the quotes that were said last night, it was a lot of essentially, we beat ourselves. We came out with a poor attitude and we allowed Memphis to essentially take over the game. And Pineda talked about the battle that Atlanta didn't show and that Memphis did show. But here's my question. I think, Sydney, for you give me your 2 cents on it. And by all means, you guys in the chat, because I definitely want to hear your take on this, but I also want to hear or read your side of this. Who is at fault here? Because I've seen a lot of Pineda was outcoached, and I've seen a lot of, the players just didn't play. What do you feel was the issue in this one? Because I'll give you my quick take on it. This team actually came out in the proper formation, tactics, everything else to me was what it should have been.
Yeah.
The players did not come out and act like they gave a crap about this match by any stretch of the imagination. And I think, yes, there should have been some initial, like some changes midway through that were more than just like for like subs. I think because you had a little bit of change. You swapped the wings. You maybe moved around the midfield a little bit, but there were no wholesale changes last night. And I think the big one that you brought up in the press conference last night, and that Pineda kind of mentioned, was not playing Almada. And you hear the Almada chants,
Right.
the "Where's Almada?" Those chants were coming out.
Yeah.
But do you put that on Pineda in terms of the team having to rely on their secret weapon in a match they 100% should not have had to rely on that? Or do
I
you
mean,
put it on the players who just didn't want to come out and seem like they cared to play?
the players can't. I mean, Gonzalo Pineda can't put the ball in the back of the net, Tyler. Gonzalo Pineda can't connect passes. Gonzalo Pineda can't challenge for duels. Gonzalo Pineda can't step into these guys' shoes and play the game for them. This team has to perform. And we can say Pineda out, Pineda out, Pineda got it wrong, Pineda's tactics were wrong as much as we want. But a lot of this has to be on the players. Like, Pineda can only do so much. He can only say so much. He can only put out the players that he feels give Atlanta United the best chance to win. And yes, he had to make some decisions based on Saturday against Nashville and the match on Sunday against Chicago. And every coach in MLS has to deal with this. Not just Pineda, but every coach in MLS. And again, maybe there could have been some players that could have played last night that didn't. He also said about Almada, yeah, he didn't want to risk it because, I mean, they weren't possessing the ball anyway. I mean, he would have been able to get service in the first place, which I kind of agree with. But again, like like I said, you can only say so much. You can only do so much, and I feel like fans are gonna use last night's loss, Wednesday night's loss, to kind of push their narrative. It's disappointing. Atlanta United didn't play well. Atlanta United didn't do the things they needed to do to win. They were outplayed by a side that they should have beaten rather easily, But part of that could be on Pineda, yes, but not all of it is on Pineda. And those 2 points don't have to be mutually exclusive. And again, I feel like there's preconceived notions that Gonzalo Pineda should be fired. You look at where this team is right now in the standings. Yes, they've flown some leads, but at the same time, they're third place in the East. I mean, you can't argue that. That's a lot better than what they were last year. So I feel like, yes, you could make a case that Pineda may have gotten some things wrong on Wednesday, but at the same time, he can't score. He can't make passes. He can't win duels. He can't play the midfield. He can't make saves. So
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of it, because Pineda did come out last night, and rightfully, as the coach, the first thing that needs to come out of your mouth is, "I take responsibility," right?
yeah,
Because you do. At the end of the
right,
day, it is your responsibility to put the right players in the right positions, and everything else. And I totally understand that. However, I also understand from a coaching perspective of, A, you got to rest guys, and B, this is the perfect opportunity for you to play guys who have shown they deserve time, which is
yeah,
what he said last night. He said, you know, I put in guys, I see them training every week in and week out, and maybe they're not quite ready for league play, but they've shown me that they're capable of coming out and deserving time. And this is the match that I don't think there's anybody that would disagree with this being a match that you should have been able to play everybody that you played and come out
yeah,
with a solid win, because
right,
you have talent there. You really do. Like you said, Pineda can't go out and receive the ball well off of a halfway decent pass. Pineda can't go out there and pass the ball. Pineda can't play midfield. He can't do this and that. He can make some tactical changes when it became very obvious that Atlanta was not holding up against Memphis 100%. I think that's
yeah.
definitely
No, I agree.
on Pineda, but
I agree.
I think, one of the quotes that he had last night was, because I asked him, how do you keep the morale up? How do you keep the morale up of especially the younger guys, the Johnny Fortunes, the Tyler Wolfs, these younger guys that are maybe just getting that real first taste to an extent. I mean, I understand they played before, but he came out and said, I have to do my part as coaching them, but there are specific areas that they can improve in as well, and they have to take ownership of going out and playing a crap game because that's what they did. And again, it goes both ways. So I don't think it's fair to say, Pineda out and all this other stuff, but I also don't think it's fair to just maybe take a huge dump on the players either. It's 100% on everybody, this entire group of people. Maybe changes needed to be made. They were a little more wholesale with the game itself, but also like maybe if y'all just made some passes and strung together like 6 passes up the field, you might not be stuck in your own half for like 80% of the match. So that's where I think I get frustrated because they have the talent to be able to run all over this field, but nobody could string together even the simplest of passes. I felt like I was watching like a U12 team out there at times. It was really frustrating. So the blame goes all around, but I know that narrative has kind of been going around a lot, and everybody is at fault ultimately.
I was surprised that we didn't see Parada earlier than we did last night, Wednesday night. So I also say too, I was surprised that Cobb stayed in. I would have swapped Cobb for Parada, but then again, you have a Brahma on a yellow card. I could be misremembering it.
Abram came in. I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, Cobb came off for Parada, and we were thinking it was going to be Abram because he was on that yellow early.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. But yeah, I feel like there could have been. Yes, I do agree. There probably should have been some substitutions at halftime to try to change the face of the match. And yeah, I kind of do fault Pineda for that, but at the same time, Tyler, you're just saying, and I think both of us were just saying, the players that are on the field have to perform, have to step up, and Pineda can only do so much from a tactical standpoint, from a motivational standpoint, and a lot of that is on the players.
Well,
so
let me ask you this, because this is gonna confuse me because I'm so used to saying T Riddle, Jimothy Riddle, saying in all caps, by the way, for everybody listening after the fact, it's on the coach if the player doesn't want to play.
Is it though?
All right, so here's my redirect with that. Last night, you had Gonzalo Pineda bringing out a handful of guys who have not gotten any or a very minimal time this season, last season, if at all. Mm-hmm. And you're saying, it's on the coach to motivate them. The fact that he's giving you the time, you've shown that you deserve the time in trading. Yeah. He's giving you the time to come out and play your game. And then you come out and you lay one in the way that you did last night. The motivation is you're getting time. You're getting your chance to go prove yourself. I don't know what else you expect, Pineda to do in that situation. I mean, you have to be able to bring that up from your own innards somewhere at some point. That's got to be on you to take control of what you're able to take control of in a match and push forward with it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And just real quick, before we get to Jake, Matt saying, I feel like missing Greg is huge in these types of matches. He provides leadership on the pitch and seems to hold guys accountable for a lack of motivation. Yeah, no, I agree. And, it's those intangibles that Guzan can provide. And, of course, he didn't play. He was tweeting from the Atlanta United account. So, yeah, I wonder what would be different if he were playing last night. But, yeah, I don't know. I'm tired of talking about last night.
I know. I gotta throw this because also saying, he shouldn't be waiting until 60 minutes to sub out a player that doesn't want to play. We should have destroyed Memphis. I understand that 100%. I think it's a tough situation. And you're talking about man management. You're talking about Nashville here in a couple of days. I mean, you had 3 matches in 6 days. So you had Chicago Sunday, you had Open Cup last night, and now you've got Nashville, which you're traveling to on Saturday. So I think at the end of the day, it's easy to get stuck on, well, you had the personnel out there that should have been able to handle that match with no issues. And if they couldn't, you almost don't deserve to win.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. It's all said and done. It's all wrapped up. So
It's over.
it's time to look
Rearview
forward
mirror.
to Nashville. And with
Yes.
that, this is the perfect time to bring in our good friend and
Hey
announcer,
guys,
Jake Zivin.
what's up?
Come
Hey,
on, Jake.
Have you talked it all out? The loss last night. Have you gotten
think
it all
we
out?
have.
Therapy
Yeah, it felt like that the first 25 minutes, didn't it?
Yeah.
it was rough. It was rough.
Man, it's Open Cup. Atlanta will be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully. We hope so.
Yeah, it's a tough one to swallow. I think that's where a lot of the fan base is struggling. But at the end of the day, that's what the Open Cup is all about, right? You're going to have games like that, and that's why it's so much fun to watch. It's just maybe a little less fun when it's your team.
Of course. Yeah, look, they happen. When a team rotates, we talked to Gonzalo Pineda today for our broadcast meeting ahead of this game, and what he said is, like, I rotated 10 guys. We're playing a team that plays together, right, that is used to playing together. That's their first team. He, as you guys mentioned, he kind of put some self-reflection of the blame on himself, saying, like, did I rotate too many? But look, I think at this stage of the Open Cup, that's what you do when you're an MLS team playing a midweek game against a USL championship team. You rotate, you give guys a chance to play, and you hope you get a win. And obviously it didn't happen for Atlanta, which is the beauty of the cup, as you said, right? It may be better for everybody else. Tough for Atlanta, but it's, to me, I don't see it as a result that's going to have much of an effect going forward in MLS for Atlanta.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It be what it be, right? Like, that's just how you got to look at it. So
Exactly.
Jake, we appreciate you coming on. This is obviously first time coming on. So just, I'm sure most everybody knows you, and we have this new great broadcasting crew on Apple TV. But if you can, just kind of let everybody know who you are, what you do, where you came from, all that good stuff.
Yeah, great to be on. Great to see you guys. Great to chat. So I'm now paired with Taylor Twellman on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. Taylor and I will be calling the game from Nashville, which has been great. We called the Atlanta-Charlotte game earlier, so this will be our second time seeing Atlanta United. For the past 8 seasons, I was the local television voice of the Portland Timbers. I was the Kevin Egan of the Portland Timbers, as it is, and throughout that time, got a good amount of games with ESPN and with Fox as well over the past 5 years, and now here we are. So, born and raised in Evanston, Illinois, right outside of Chicago. Been in Portland and Oregon now for over a decade, and crisscrossing the country on a weekly basis right now to wherever game we're at. It's been a blast. It's been a thrill for 2 months, and excited to continue to go. Excited to get to Atlanta, which we certainly will this year, and get to Mercedes-Benz. I've been once before. It was a wonderful day for all of you. 2018 MLS Cup. I called the game on the radio for the Timbers. Man, I was blown away, right? And I try to approach my job, even when calling Timbers games, from a relatively neutral perspective. So obviously, you're rooting for fun moments and all that. But for me, my main takeaway was what an atmosphere, what a stadium, what an event that was. It felt as big as any sports event that I'd ever been to and covered, which, includes multiple college football national championship games, right? It felt like that in a really good way. And great night for you guys, for Atlanta, and a special day. So I'm excited to get back, though, to the Benz, because it's been 5 years.
Yeah, you're actually our second Timbers-related guest we've ever had. We had Ryan Clark on from the Oregonian a few weeks ago. I'm sure you know him very well. But yeah, he has similar things to say about Mercedes-Benz. He wasn't there for a match, but he was there, I believe, for the Georgia game against – I forget who
probably the Ducks, right?
Yeah, the Ducks, exactly.
And they smashed the Ducks, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Dan Lanning's first head coaching game was against Georgia, and
that's
I bet
right.
he was wishing he was back at Georgia after that game. So.
Yeah, right, exactly. He did all right, though. So my time before I was with the Timbers, I was in Eugene, Oregon as a sports anchor for the local news station there during the glory years, the Chip Kelly years. Covered no longer your boy Marcus Mariota when he was in college, but a big fan of Marcus. And I was hoping that he would have had a better season last year in Atlanta, but alas.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, how's it been going? I mean, you mentioned you've been at it for a couple of months. You're doing the Timbers games up there in the Pacific Northwest, but how have things been going with MLS Season Pass? Working with Taylor, who obviously is a big name in the media world. Has a very
So he doesn't need to hear that. He doesn't need to hear that anymore. Don't worry.
No, but obviously, he has a long broadcasting career, very successful career as a player.
Yes.
So, how's that been working with him? And again, how's the MLS season pass been as a whole?
It's been great. It's a dream for me. I grew up in Evanston as a diehard Chicago Fire fan. I'm, of the age that grew up with this league. I was a kid when the league started, a kid when the Fire came into the league in '98. For me, they were on the same level as the Bears and the Cubs and the Bulls as I was growing up, a soccer player and a soccer fan. And that kind of love extended to the league as a whole as I got older. I interned for Major League Soccer when I was in college. I worked as the the clock and score operator for the MLS Game of the Week in 2005 and 2006 in the production truck for ESPN2 when I was, I'll date myself, when I was 20 and 21, when I was in college. So like that experience brought me to, I think, really being more focused on not just the Fire, but the health of Major League Soccer and loving this league and wanting it to grow. And I've kept that. I always kept that and felt that, even through kind of a 7 or 8 year break going into local news as a sports anchor reporter, which was kind of the way to get an entry-level job as a sports broadcaster back then. This sort of stuff didn't exist back then. So you couldn't really carve out your own thing about soccer in the mid to late 2000s. So I always kept that love of MLS, always wanted to get back into it. Worked out to be able to do so with the Timbers for the past 8 years. And then when this came around, for me, it's just a dream to go to a different game every week. And we've been fortunate to be at kind of one of the marquee matchups of the week every week. Right. And to work with Taylor, who, I joked about, kind of feeding his ego, but he's been the face of ESPN soccer for a reason for the past decade. Right. First of all, he's a great guy. I've loved being with him, but from a working standpoint, like he's really, really good at this. And so for me, even in 2 months, it's been eye-opening to see how he kind of goes about it, how he approaches television and how he is on television, which is a skill and he's very good at. So that's been great. I've had more red vines being next to Taylor than I have in years past. He loves his red vines. And I think he's going to take some time off from being a professional golfer to come work with us in Nashville, because I feel like he's been playing in more golf tournaments the past couple of weeks than calling soccer games.
Alive and well on Twitter with the
yes,
golf.
He is.
Sure.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
We needed him last night doing his "What are we doing?" rant.
Yeah. That's that GIF or GIF, whichever one you want to call it. That'll live forever. And Atlanta supporters, go ahead and use it. Right.
All day. So now that you've kind of gotten involved, y'all, I think everybody's kind of settling in, all of the Apple TV MLS announcers. Yeah. But you mentioned, because you've been around it for so long, you kind of took a break. But what has kind of surprised you so far about the league, really in I guess maybe the past couple of years, but especially since you really took over doing the national broadcast and everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think the progression of the league has been remarkable, and it's been quicker than I would have expected. Again, I go back to growing up in Chicago, going to games at the original Soldier Field before it was renovated, and then to Naperville, to a D3 high school or D3 college football stadium in Naperville to watch them play, then back to the renovated Soldier Field, and then to Bridgeview. And even when I was working on those ESPN games when I was in college, and we were going to places like Spartan Stadium in San Jose and Robertson Stadium in Houston and Rice Eccles when RSL came into the league, and RFK right in DC, I wouldn't have expected that as quickly as it did, the league would grow up and mature in such a significant way. I think it started when Toronto came into the league, and certainly accelerated when Seattle and Portland came into the league, and showing what a downtown stadium can do, and a team that can be really relevant in their cities. I think those three teams, Toronto, Seattle, and Portland, were the first to kind of be that way. And then Atlanta comes in 2015, and I think sets the bar of how early success can be had for an expansion team, both on and off the field. Off the field's easier, right? Seattle, Portland, again, Toronto, they had that off the field to start. But on the field, sorry, 2000. When Atlanta came in, I said 2015, didn't I? They're not Orlando or New York City. 2017. So when they came in 2017, they set that bar for what a team can do on the field as well. Obviously, it's well documented. the fan support in Mercedes-Benz and Bobby Dodd before that was probably even higher than anybody expected, even in Atlanta. But to me, the bar was set with on the field success, winning MLS Cup in year 2, and LAFC, kind of built off that, right? The following year when they came in. So to me, like that growth as quick as it was surprising. I wouldn't have thought, and I've said this a lot when talking about the context of my job with the Timbers for the past 8 years, I wouldn't have thought back in 2005 and 6, when I was going to Rice Eccles and RFK, that a place like Providence Park could exist in 2011 when they came into the league, right? I thought that would be 20, 30 years down the road. I'd say the same thing about Atlanta United. Like, I think we always envisioned, okay, MLS can get to be maybe never where the NFL will be. I mean, that's a super high bar, but can be filling up these big stadiums with 40, 50,000 people. And to think that Atlanta was able to do that in 2017 was, for me, quite remarkable. I would have thought you're talking 220, 40, right? Maybe for MLS teams to be able to do that. So yeah, it's remarkable. The league keeps getting better. Obviously the quality on the field is better. The incoming and outgoing transfers are, show that, right. And Atlanta has been probably the leader when it comes to, Al Marone, I think, changed how everybody in the league views what the league can be, bringing a young player in and then selling him for a lot of money and having success with that player when they're here, selling them for a ton of money, and hopefully that player continuing to have success, which just shows better on the league. So it's been remarkable, I think, and I'm happy to be along for the ride, but it all happened, I think, quicker than I would have told you it would have happened 15 years ago.
Yeah. And then, from the Southern standpoint, obviously Atlanta, but now Charlotte, now Nashville. I mean, it just has
it's wild,
really
right? In SEC country for MLS
ACC,
to be as successful as it is wild. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty incredible. And I'm kind of like you. I would have imagined it myself. I know there's some national writers who would have imagined it either, but now here we are. And pretty incredible. And I would hope only up from here. So kind of talking about Nashville, and no, you and Taylor were there, I believe, the other day against LAFC. But just from a standpoint of where they are, kind of lining up with Atlanta off the field from a contract standpoint, obviously Walker Zimmerman, who is probably one of the top center backs in the league, along there with Miles Robinson, obviously on a DP contract, obviously locked in with them for the next several years as he's kind of established himself again as one of the best at his position. Then you have Miles Robinson, who is another best 11 center back who is out of contract after this season. I guess, what are your thoughts about players like center backs getting designated player contracts, and should Atlanta do the same for Miles Robinson to keep him in the fold?
I have to be careful how I answer this question, because one of my close friends and former broadcast partner with the Timbers is Liam Ridgewell, who famously was a designated player center back who led the Timbers to the 2015 MLS Cup. I think it depends on the club, right? If you're Atlanta, there's expectations for how you're going to use your 3 designated player slots. Right. And those expectations are on players like Thiago Almada and Miguel Almiron and Joseph Martinez, players in the attack that are going to have that kind of impact. But that's not necessarily the right way for every team to build a roster. And I think that's what makes MLS interesting, is there's different ways to build a roster and different ways to have success. I'm sure Nashville feels that Walker Zimmerman is worth it and then some for the stability that he's brought, the ability that he's brought, but he is such an important part of that back line that has been so good statistically since they entered the league, just behind Philadelphia as far as goals allowed and all of that, which for a team, we're only talking 4 years, right? They were an expansion team and they were so good defensively. They're the best in the league right now, entering this game as far as goals allowed so far, the fewest in the league, just 5 this year. So for me, for what Nashville is and how they've built their roster and what they want to be, it's absolutely worth it. For Atlanta, does it make sense? That's a question for Garth ultimately, right? And I think it's a more difficult one, because you don't want to lose Miles Robinson, right? If you can't, and if he wants to stay, I mean, right, like if he wants to go to Europe and that's on the table, that's a totally different story. And I think you support the player at like him at the stage of his career to do that for sure. But if you're talking just specifically from an Atlanta perspective, yeah, you don't want to lose him. But then again, if you're Atlanta United, how do you use your designated player slots? I think you probably are going to always use all three of them in the attack, right? And you want to get a lot out of those guys, a lot, right? There's high expectations.
Yeah, and just real quick, I mean, you mentioned there's so many ways to build a roster in MLS. I remember Jim Curtin was saying a few weeks ago, leading up to Philly LAFC in the Champions League, here's Philly, kind of this blue collar, built through the academy, and then here's LAFC, you have Vela, you have Blunga, you had Bale last year. So yeah, absolutely right. Several ways to build a roster. I find there's not one right way to do it. But I guess that's the beauty of MLS, isn't it?
I think so. I think that's why the league is so interesting. Look, like
Yeah.
I've always been one whose sporting interests have to do with places I have a connection to. So growing up in Chicago, as I said, it was the Fire, it was the Bears, it was the Cubs, it was the Bulls. The Cubs were terrible, but I wasn't going to be a Yankees fan or a Braves fan, right? Just because in the 90s, the Cubs were bad and the Braves were amazing. They stole Greg Maddux from me. I was devastated as a kid, right? But I was a Cubs fan, right? Didn't matter if they were good or bad, didn't matter. For me, I've always viewed soccer that same way. The Fire, when I was 12 and they came into the league, that was my team, and the U.S. national team was my team, and MLS is my league. And so for me, I love MLS. Part of it is that it's interesting. I enjoy the parody, and if it's manufactured, then it is. I don't mind it. Can the league open up spending a little bit? Absolutely, right? To make it, I think that's important. I think it's going to happen to grow and to continue to raise the level of play on the field. But I do hope there is always that ability for teams to build rosters differently, because look, in the European leagues, there's not really, right? It's just spend the most money and you will win. Like that in the big leagues in Europe, that's it. And it's great. The quality of play is the best in the world in the Premier League, right? But ultimately, Manchester City spends the most money. Manchester City, especially after yesterday, are going to win the league, right? Yeah. And so
Chelsea something to say about that.
Right. Okay, you've got to get it right for sure.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
But Leicester was the literally one in whatever 30-year exception. Yeah. And that was great, and it was an amazing year. But that's not normal. That isn't going to happen frequently. It's going to be one of the teams that spends the most money. Obviously, absolutely. You can spend money wrong as you see it, and that's the case in any sport. But it's going to be one of the teams that spends the most money. And I hope that MLS, as it continues to open up and spend more money, which it needs to do, I hope that it still finds a way to not lose that ability to build teams in different ways and still be contenders, which to me makes the league very interesting.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, whether you want to call it manufactured parody or not, it is what it is. It keeps things interesting no matter what, right? You're typically going to have, at any given time, at least one player on the field who's going to be able to make a big, big difference. And that's just the way it is. And looking forward to Saturday, you've got Hani Mukhtar, you've got Thiago Almada, possibly Jorge Giacomakis for Atlanta, but then you have Walker Zimmerman. So there's lots of factors. But in terms of Mukhtar and Almada, how does, in I guess your preparation, everything that you've seen, how do each team prepare for each of those players?
It's interesting. We talked to both teams today about the other player, and both, of course, the managers and the players are going to be effusive about the counterparts. Mukhtar's an interesting one. He, is not necessarily like a traditional number 10, like Thiago is closer to. They've been playing him as a second striker. I assume it'll be with Teal Bunbury because they just traded CJ Sapong. He thrives in those areas around the box. He thrives in moments. He's a player who steps up when the team needs him. And guys like that, I was around Diego Valeri for years in Portland, and they're different players, but they remind me in that way of Valeri wouldn't necessarily boss games like you'd expect kind of an Argentinian number 10 to do, but he took a big moment better than anybody in the league for his 6 to 8 years. Like he would finish the opportunities when his team needed to. He would score wonderful goals, and he was just kind of always there. Mukhtar is that same way. Almada is kind of the number 10, right? And we talked to Pineda about him before the Charlotte game. So this is now 6-7 weeks ago. And what he told us was he wants Thiago to be, even at his young age, like a Lucas Elarayan, like a Nicolas Ladero, a player who wants to always be on the ball and be dominating a game and just like have that desire. It's all going through me. I'm the man. And he like that. Yes, it seems like, okay, yeah, you're the only current winner of an MLS or of a World Cup in MLS ever. Like, it should be easy for you to have that attitude, but not when you're a young player, right? It's still, so he was trying to empower him to do that. We followed up with Gonzalo about it today. He thought that he was doing that and then went away for the international break, a little injury. So it's been kind of just jointed since then. Wants him to get back to that. But so they're different players, right? For Nashville, I think, but both, for Nashville with Almada and with Atlanta with Mukhtar, you just got to be aware where they are at all times. I think Nashville probably learned about giving the best player on the field too much time and too much space in the midfield last week against LAFC when they let Bouanga just right after Zimmerman came out of the game. So maybe they're a little disorganized. Let Bouanga just carry the ball 40 yards straight up the middle and just bang it from 25 yards out. Like, you can't let a player like that, the best player on the field, have that kind of time and space. It's going to be the same thing with Almada. And Almada and Bouanga are very different players. But if Almada is able to run free like that throughout the midfield, Nashville's going to be in trouble. So I'm sure they learn from that.
Yeah. So a team like Nashville, who have kind of established themselves as a consistent playoff contender, but haven't really gotten over the hump in the postseason, what switch kind of needs to flip for them to finally get over that hump? Like we talked about Handy Mukhtar, and it seems like outside of him, Nashville don't really get a lot of scoring. So
no.
I guess
they don't.
You're what kind of needs to happen for them to take that next step, I guess.
Yeah, that's the thing. Mukhtar had 23 goals last year, Golden Boot, next highest scorer on the team. CJ Sapong, Teal Bumber each had 5. Like, that's a huge gap. Gary Smith was open talking to us the past couple of weeks that they need more out of their number 9 position. The CJ Sapong trade was interesting because they had Sapong and they had Bunbury, and those were really their options at the 9. And they trade Sapong for Lucas McNaughton. They clearly felt, and we talked to Gary about this today, that their center back depth issues were more important right now. They needed to get another center back in. They signed Nick DePuy, or traded for Nick DePuy with the Galaxy over the offseason. He showed up injured, had to have Achilles surgery on one Achilles. He's having his other Achilles done like in the next couple of weeks. Gary Smith, he would only leave it at this, but he confirmed that they were not aware of those injuries when they traded for him. You can take, you can go what off that, what you think, but he's clearly not happy about that situation. So they were planning on Nick DePuy. They traded Dave Romney because they were planning on Nick DePuy being there. And maybe that's not necessarily like for like, but they wanted the GAM, right, that came from trading Romney and then having DePuy there. So now they have Jack Mayer, who's a young player who's been starting with Walker Zimmerman. They just gave an MLS debut to Josh Bauer, who's a former Atlanta United 2 guy, last week when Zimmerman came out. So there's depth issues there. So they bring in McNaughton from Toronto instead of Sapong. I'm going with that is, so now it's Bunbury's, like the Bunbury and Ethan Zubak are kind of the number 9s on the roster. Do they try to go with maybe a false 9 or a different type of a 9? If when Randall Leal comes back, do they just kind of go with a more fluid front 3 or front 4 with a Pico and a Schaffelberg and a Leal and a Mukhtar and no traditional kind of bigger hold up 9, which they haven't done before? I don't know, but they need to figure that out. I think Gary Smith has been open about it. And to answer your original question, Sydney, I think it's a number 9. Like, that's how they take the next step, is a 15 to 20 goals a year goal scorer. Ake Loba did not work out. And that, when you're a team like Nashville and you construct your roster in that way, and it's any team in the league, if you miss on your big signing in this league, it's going to be difficult to right. And they missed on Ake Loba. I think it's fair to say at this point, at least they will think so. They didn't play him much. They never started him, and then they sent him on loan. So yeah, if they can find a 9, maybe it's the summer, maybe it's the off season, that can give them 15 goals a year, then I think they could take that next step.
Yeah. And that's what
And
it
that's
feels
not to say that they can't have success and they can't make a playoff run. And I think, like you said, they're going to be a consistent contender. And when you're hard to score on, especially in the playoffs, you can go far. But to be like a supporter shield contender, I think it's a 9. Yeah.
Yeah. And you never know what can happen, right? Like you said, we always hear the old proverb, defenses win championships, right? Well, maybe not as much in soccer, but to a degree. I mean, you keep a clean sheet and you can't be beaten. So,
sure.
I
agree with you though. I mean, you look at who, who's won MLS Cup. Last year was LAFC Philly, those two teams. I know Philly's known for their defense, but last year they scored a ton of goals, right? Yeah. So I know they don't have the names that an LAFC or an Atlanta do in the attack, but their attacking as a team was wonderful. New York City the year before that, Columbus, right? I mean, these Seattle, you guys, Atlanta, right? Seattle, Toronto, Portland. I mean, these teams are all good all around, but it's not the kind of Greece winning the Euros. You know what I'm saying? Right. It's teams that have attacking talent and attacking firepower.
So, all right, we've kept you for a while. We want to be considerate of your time. We know you're busy getting ready for the game and everything.
Appreciate this.
Final question.
Okay.
Because Nashville is close, I guess you can consider this a derby if you want to.
What do you guys think? I'm curious. I've been polling everybody I talked to in Atlanta. Who is Atlanta United's rival? Like, and how do you rank it? And who fires you up?
I'll give you mine.
Okay.
Nashville, because they just have had the issues since they came into the league. That was where Joseph got hurt back, when his ACL happened, and the fan base just tend to not like each other. Orlando feels manufactured sometimes because Atlanta was so dominant for so long.
Right.
And Charlotte just isn't old enough, I think, yet. We always try to throw out the names, and we had a good one, the Crown and Coke Derby earlier this year for that one, for the Crown City and Coca-Cola. But I think in terms of just teams not liking each other, at least in the Southeast, to me, it's Nashville so far.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually talking about it on the Twitter space with someone a few minutes ago, or a few hours ago, I should say. I think the one thing that kind of threw a wrench into things was when Nashville were in the Western Conference during COVID. That kind of threw a wrench into things. They didn't play each other twice every year, but now with them both in the same conference again, playing each other home and away in the return fixture, I think that kind of kicks up the rivalry thing. As Tyler was saying, every time these teams play, it seems like there's something that happens. And I was talking to Walker Zimmerman about this last year after this match that got delayed for
3 hours,
2.5 hours.
No,
something like that.
Yeah.
To a lightning delay. I was asking about it. They said, I mean, it seems like every time these teams play each other, there's some weird twist or something like that happens. So, I think proximity-wise and considering the matches that these teams have played, I think it's fair to consider this a true out-and-out derby. And from my vantage point, I don't expect anything different on Saturday than has occurred between these two sides in the past. I mean, what do you think?
I hope so. I hope it is. It's interesting. I feel like every Atlanta person I talk to has a different answer, which is really interesting. Some I feel like have hold on to Orlando, right? And love the fact that Atlanta had so much success against Orlando and still do really love that fact.
Yep.
I was on with Jason Longshore earlier today. He threw out the Red Bulls.
Red Bulls is a big one.
As a big one, and Toronto even, and Orlando before Nashville or Charlotte. So it's interesting. I think Nashville's still relatively new, and you mentioned the pandemic. Charlotte's super new, so I hope that proximity wins in the long run because I think that just makes for better rivalries. But Orlando's going to have Miami there, right? So are they kind of pulled away? I as being in Cascadia, right? I don't love the kind of three-way thing because I think Vancouver always feels like kind of the stepchild.
Yeah.
Right? And Portland and Seattle are this.
Absolutely.
And Vancouver is there. And it's half of it. And we're all kind of cool.
Yeah.
Everybody's kind of cool with Vancouver, right? But I'm sure Vancouver's no, we want to be somebody's rival, right? And they are, but so that's why I think one rival, LAFC is perfect. Right. So having one primary rival in the long term makes those games extra special. Maybe I hope it becomes Nashville. I think that's a good one. I think, Nashville's back in the East. It was interesting talking to Gary Smith about it last week. It was LAFC. It was a Western Conference opponent. And he was like, they were not happy playing in the West.
Yeah.
There was so much travel last year. They did not like it. They did not like going back and forth. And they were like, we started to figure out the East. You know, they put us in the West to begin the whole thing. And we were there for 2 weeks. And then COVID happened. They bring us to the East for that rest of that season, unbalanced, conferences. They stay in the East for 2021, 2022. They're back West. And he's like, we just gotten to know all the Eastern Conference teams, and they got to know us. And then they put us in the West, and we're traveling way more than any other team in the league because we're so far from everything. And they did all right, clearly, which says a lot about them. But they were really happy to be back in the East, and they'll stay there. And yeah, hopefully it's a good rivalry. We love that. I hope there's a little, like you're talking about stuff happening. I hope stuff happens because it makes our broadcast interesting.
Well, and you talk about Jason, and we've talked about that a lot, but the Red Bulls, you talking about stuff happening, the Red Bulls, that was the rivalry in terms of every time they met each other on the pitch, it was always something. There was fights, arguments. There was, if the camera was close enough or if you were near the field, you could hear the cussing and screaming and everything. And there was always, cards being thrown and some of the best matches we've ever seen. And thankfully Atlanta, finally got over that hump of being in the regular season this year. But yeah, no, Red Bulls is good. But in terms of like, I guess local, quote unquote, Nashville's 4 hours away from Atlanta. Yeah. Both teams have fans that travel well, so it just seems natural. I think. So
love it.
It'll be fun.
Let's go.
Cool. So you'll be there Saturday.
We'll be there.
Are you? Or do you have any plans on anywhere you're going to hit in Nashville while you're there?
Man, so I'm going to be in Nashville for 20 hours. Literally, I land. It's an early game, right? So I'm landing at 9 p.m. and I'm out at 5:30 after the game. I've got a family event obligation I've got to be at on Sunday. So I am not in town long enough. But we're back there, and Nashville's a wild place. It's a party town.
Yeah.
My other former Timbers broadcast partner, Ross Smith, who's part of our MLS season pass crew. Ross lives in Nashville now. And so with his wife, who works for Nashville SC. So they're very, very close friends with both of them. So we had a wonderful trip to Nashville last summer where they took us around the town. It was July 4th weekend. Broadway is crazy. Crazy. Yeah, it's like Vegas with cowboy hats. And man, it was great. And went to other places as well, listening to live music. So this trip, unfortunately, won't have any of that, but we've got at least 2 more on the schedule over the next month or 2. So plenty of time to enjoy Nashville and have some hot chicken. Man, they delivered us some hot Nashville hot chicken from the stadium in the booth last week. And there was a medium and a spicy, and I took a bite of the spicy 10 minutes before we were going on the air, and almost didn't recover in time for the show to start. It was
that Nashville spicy chicken. That's like when you go to a Thai restaurant.
Exactly. And Taylor's making fun of me because he's like, "Oh, you can't handle it." He didn't have a bite. Halftime, he has a bite of the medium. And he can't even handle that. And he's freaking out. I think you mentioned it on the air in the first 5 minutes of the second half. He was still trying to figure out which team was in which jersey because it was it was the One Planet kits last week. Yeah. So he's like the first 5 minutes of the second half, he didn't know what he was watching. Yeah. So
I'll tell you this. When you get to Nashville, maybe next time when you've got more time, or when you come to Atlanta because they have a couple here, a place called Hattie B's, if you've never heard about it.
Yeah, I know Hattie B's. I don't know if we made it last. Tried to make it last time, and I think we maybe showed up to the original one, and there was a line, and so we couldn't. It was a wait, but I'm all about that. Yeah. Hattie B's. Cool. We'll make it there. Again,
either Hattie B's or another one that escapes me. I'll remember it probably after you get off here. But it was pretty hot. Yeah, we'll hook you up on Twitter. Let's remember. Right.
But I got maybe after the game because if I do before the game, it was could be exactly. Recover. Need to give myself time to recover.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, when you're in the bins, we'll come say hey to you. If you get to call a game down here, we appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure. It's been a great time, and by all means, you're welcome back whenever you want to come on. We'll
always happy to come on. Have me on. Awesome. We're doing a lot of Atlanta games this year. I think. We don't have a full schedule at all, but it's already be our second. We've got a couple more. Next week we're in Miami for the Joseph Derby. So, man, we're buzzing. So we'll be getting a lot of Atlanta.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake.
Cool.
Really
All right,
appreciate
cheers,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
See you.
Take care. Cheers. Should be a fun match on Saturday. I'm really looking forward to it. And, yeah, thanks for Jake for coming on and taking us through his insight on from the national viewpoint. And like you were saying, Tyler, we're going to try to do this throughout the year. So,
Yep.
yeah,
We are
off to a good start.
Yeah. I mean, and Jake's great. Love the insight from him. It's always neat, when you've got somebody who is. It's his job. It's their job to be so focused on both sides of the match, right? That's what you're doing as a commentator, and we can get so focused up on the Atlanta United side. Obviously, that's what we do, but there's other storylines. There's so many other things going on with a lot of these matches, and I think it's great talking about the quote unquote rivalry, derby, whatever you want to call it, with Nashville, because to me it feels like the most organic one.
Yeah.
I saw in the chat a little bit, and we just talked about it, but like Orlando always felt like, because Darren Eales decided to throw up a $20,000 billboard right outside their stadium one day, like it pissed them off, and ever since then
I don't see Garth doing that in Nashville, by the way.
Which, and he can't that same exact thing, because after that happened, MLS put in the rule to where you cannot do that. An opposing team cannot do something like that. So thank you, Darren, for creating that rule.
Atlanta United setting trends as always. By the way, I looked it up. It's Prince's. It's like the big one in Nashville, the hot chicken place. I mean, you can get Hattie B's and you're in Atlanta, but Prince's, I got it. When I was on a work trip to Nashville, and it's pretty hot. So I was trying not to burn my mouth off when I was eating it.
Yeah,
but,
the first time I ever had Hattie B's was actually in 2021. My family and I went up there. We went on a very long road trip, and the first stop was Nashville. So we drove early, 4 hours, got there, got to Honky Tonk Highway, as it's called, well before it got crazy. And we were able to eat some Hattie B's, and my mouth stayed on fire for about 3 or 4 hours. So I get it. I totally get what he's saying. That stuff it's not regular hot. It's hot.
Can't play
and
around
I like
with
spicy food.
it. Same here. Got to be careful of that stuff. But
yeah.
But yeah, good to talk to Jake, and looking forward to this call on Saturday. I know I'll be there in Nashville. You'll be home, I think, and a lot of folks are.
I'll actually be in the mountains in North Georgia.
They'll be in the mountains. Okay.
Yeah, so I'll be halfway there, but
yeah, he's halfway there. But I know a lot of folks will be up at the match and probably won't be able to hear Jake and Taylor's call. But looking forward to it. Let's talk about Saturday. Obviously, the nasty taste in Atlanta United's mouth from Wednesday against Memphis will still be in there. It is just so vital, I think, Tyler, that they just flush it out of their system. Again, like I mentioned, this has kind of become a theme with this team to maybe start off good and then just taper off for whatever reason. I don't know if it's motivation or whatever it is. Pineda was talking about it after the match, just mental things. They try to plan for it during training, but it's just a mentality that they have to adopt. And I mentioned that they can't play like this like they did against Memphis, against Nashville, especially given the fact that Nashville are so good defensively. Jake was saying 5 goals allowed at MLS. That's, I feel like, far and away the league lead. But they have Henny Mukhtar, who, even if you shut him down, there's not much scoring outside of him. So you're going to have to find a way to break down this Nashville defense, maybe nick a goal or 2, hopefully. And
you got to get 2 now. You nicked 1 early against Memphis, and that wasn't enough.
And also bottle up Henny Mukhtar, because we know, and we talked about this team maybe don't really, well, not maybe, but this team don't have a lot of secondary scoring. It's been the case in previous years, and Gary Smith made no bones about it. So get that goal, get that second goal, really put Nashville to the sword, so to speak, and really quiet that crowd down early on. I think it's just so vital.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the caveat with that is because you actually have done a fair job this season of getting out early. We talked about it a lot last year, where Atlanta will come out and they would let teams into the game. They would not shut them down early. The problem, at least recently, has been you've gotten the early goal. You just can't hold on to it. And that's not acceptable. Like your defense has to be better than that. And the defense, not just your center backs. I'm talking about as a whole. You don't want to give up your identity as a team, right? But in theory, you go get 1 or 2 against Nashville, and you shut Hani Mukhtar down. You really, really should be able to hold on to a lead.
Yeah.
But you don't want to just sit there and park the bus either. You don't want to be pushed into your own defensive third for the majority of the match again, because you're going to end up exactly what happened against Toronto, exactly what happened against Chicago, exactly what happened against Memphis. You're going to get beat late, maybe not beat, but you're going to give up a goal late and allow the team back into it. And then it's going to go from feeling like, okay, a good night to a loss because you give up a frustrating goal again. So
Yeah.
you got to play your game. The team wants to possess the ball, and they want to possess the ball cleanly. They have to stick to their game plan. In the past 2 matches, they have not possessed the ball cleanly. They've looked very shaky in passing and receptions. They haven't won the second balls like they need to. They haven't won the duels like they need to. And it's just uncharacteristic, and they've got to figure out whatever they need to do to get back to that. Because when they play their style of soccer, they dominate possession. And this year they've had the bite to actually take the dominating possession and turn it into goals. Yeah. So, and I see a lot of people in the chat, saying you'd be happy with a tie. I mean, yeah, you would, but it just would be frustrating because now you're looking at multiple games in your past 5 that you really should have won.
Yeah.
And settling for a tie if you had won against Toronto and maybe won a little bit better against Chicago, maybe would be okay. But like, you still got to, you want to keep that 3-point train rolling and keep pushing towards the top of the East. There's no team in this league that Atlanta can't beat, but Atlanta right now is beating themselves.
Yeah, exactly. It could kind of bring it to perspective what we were just talking about, Tyler. From a scoring standpoint for Nashville, 8 goals in 9 matches to go along with those 5 goals that they've conceded. So not only can they keep teams from scoring, they struggle to score goals themselves. So that's not the worst goals for number in the league, but it's pretty close. Well, not really, because Florida Kansas City have scored 3 goals in 9 matches. But yeah, they don't score a lot, but they keep teams from scoring. And we talk about defense wins championships, but I mean, you can't win if you don't score. So
yeah,
they, like I said, they're gonna have to find some way to break down what has really been a really strong Nashville defense. LAFC were able to do that when Zimmerman came off and Bouanga had a golazo, and that ended 1-1. I mean, you consider how many weapons LAFC have, and it really could speak to a very low-scoring match on Saturday. I would like to think that there are goals in it. I'll kind of jump in with my prediction. I would say probably closer to 2-1 Atlanta would be the hope, but at the same time, considering this Nashville defense, that might be flattering Atlanta just a little bit. But yeah, I'll stick with 2-1, just personally. I'll get you your prediction too, but along with that, we maybe got to talk about this goalkeeping situation. I mean, Diop stood on his head, like we said on Wednesday last night. Of course, you have Westberg, who may be healthy, so that's something else you have to think about. I would imagine Yakimakis plays. I would imagine Almada plays. But yeah, what are your thoughts? I mean, first your predictions, and then maybe first your preferred lineup, preferred 11, and then maybe prediction.
All right, so let's talk about. I'll hit on Diop real quick. Unfortunately, Diop has now been forced to play 165 plus minutes in the past 4 days, or whatever it may be. Which again, he's a goalkeeper, so it's not to the same degree as like a midfielder, right? But I don't know that you can afford to not start him, especially if Westberg is coming off of that knee issue. Whether it is good or not, do you want to push it? Mm-hmm. And that's a tough decision, because we know Diop is more than capable. He's every match he's played in, and even if you go and watch the twos match that he played in earlier this season, he has stood on his head. He has done everything he needs to, and Atlanta has gotten their money's worth out of him already. You don't want your goalkeeper working that hard, and he's put in some shift over the past couple of days.
Yeah.
So it's tough. I think you really, really want Diop to keep up the intensity that he's brought. And I think you let Westberg rest another week. Diop got the chance, and he's done nothing to change that or lose the spot at all, I think. So, I mean, you've got to go with him at the back. I think you keep Parada and Miles.
Yeah.
I hate that you had to use Lennon and Gutman as much as you did Wednesday, but you got to stick them back in their positions. I think Wiley gets put back at the left wing spot. I keep
for Etienne.
Yeah, I keep thinking Etienne is just on the cusp of breaking through, and he is, but he just hasn't quite got the chemistry or whatever that he needs with the team. And it hasn't happened yet. And I do fully think, like, once he gets that first one, I think it's going to break through. But you got to play Wiley because Wiley's gotten out there and proven what he can do so far. So you put Wiley on the left. This might be controversial. I don't know. I think, you still got to start Aruju. But I also think because of how many minutes he's played this season so far, including now the Open Cup, I don't think it's a bad thing to rip him out at the half and put in Machop Chol on the right, or even Ronald Hernandez, and move Brooks up or something. Almada, Giacomakis. I would like to see Ibarra, but he just played 120 minutes, so I don't know. I honestly think you're going to see Sosa instead of Ibarra, and then hopefully you see Josedu right there with him. We'll see.
Yeah. I will say this, though, and excuse me, this goes back to Nashville, just their inability to score. You would think that Diop isn't really tested on Saturday. I do agree. I think he starts over Westberg. Yeah, let Westberg rest and bring him back for next week's match, the next match coming up for Atlanta United. But I agree. Probably not the worst idea in the world. Imagine... I didn't think we'd be talking about Quentin Westberg potentially starting a goal against Joseph Martinez in Inter Miami, and Joseph Martinez's first match against his former club. So we'll talk about that obviously a little next week. But yeah, what's your prediction? I said 2-1 Atlanta. What is yours?
Oh man. I really don't want to be negative. I'm not the negative person.
I know you're usually pretty positive.
I'm usually really.
I think
positive.
last night broke you. I think,
dude, last night was rough, man. I don't know.
No, I agree.
So okay, I'm going to remain positive, and here's why.
There you go.
I will remain positive because I like to think that the team got so embarrassed last night that they never, ever, ever want to have that same feeling again in the pit of their stomach. Because, I mean, me and you were there, and we saw how visibly distraught some of the players were, down as we went into the press conference and even on the field after. Like, this needed to be a slap in the face. Mm-hmm. We've talked about, okay, well, you got lucky in the past few matches, and maybe we just need to have a conversation to really, like, maybe we don't need to be so lucky. Maybe we just need to go and win the game.
Yeah.
But you haven't done that. So maybe you needed a slap in the face from a USL team. Maybe you needed to get punched in the nose and woken up a little bit. And I hope that is what happens. And I think the defense plays their heart out because they don't want to be that embarrassed again. And Giacomakis nicks his 6th goal in 6 starts, and it's 1-0.
Tying Taylor Twellman, by the way, who will be in the building.
Would tie Taylor Twellman. So that's and what? How cool would it be if he was on the call when that happened, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'll say 1-0 Atlanta, because Nashville have not been good in terms of scoring. it would be very Atlanta-esque to suddenly let them do that, but I hope that doesn't happen.
Me
So
neither.
staying positive, I'm going to go 1-0,
Yes.
and we'll see what
Okay.
happens.
So we both say a win, right? Atlanta will win. Atlanta will
Yeah,
get 3 points.
that's what I'm saying. We'll see how I feel Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, again, they should be top of the supporter shield standings at this point. But again, that's neither here nor there. We can neither we can't chase the past. You can only chase the future. So
Yeah, and quick point in the chat, Bo asking, this question got brought up a couple weeks ago.
yeah,
What are the yellow
so
card stacks looking like right now? Aren't we in danger of losing 2 or 3 of our starters on another yellow?
yeah, Yakumaki's in the bar. I just looked it up, have 3, so 2 more in there suspended.
There's also one more.
One more who is
You want to guess who it is?
right?
You might be able to go back a couple of episodes and remember. And by all means, put it in the chat. I'll give you 30 seconds, and we'll talk about something for 30 seconds. There's one more that could get suspended in the next 2 yellows. Fun fact of the day. Guesses? Bueller. Should I just say it?
Yeah, just
There it is.
Pineda.
Bruno.
Oh, I didn't
It is
think about
Gonzalo
that.
Pineda.
I didn't think about that. I thought you meant a player. It's like I have it right in front of me. I see Yako and the bar of 2 yellows. Like,
Yep.
which player has 3? But yeah, no one on the I guess the Mike Conti yellow card tightrope, as he likes to say. So yeah,
Not quite
so
there.
no one there yet. So, but yeah, Nashville. Looking forward to it, and hopefully it's not a repeat of the match against Memphis. I think if it is not, I think Atlanta United will be good.
Yeah. And one last point on the whole yellow card situation. Ibarra's red card that he got against New York doesn't do anything for his yellow card situation. So he was 2 away and has been for a while now
Yeah.
from his suspension. The red card does not add or change anything to that tally. So he's still at 2. So he just got suspended, immediate red card, took his suspension for the next game, and then he's right back at it with now 2 away from being suspended again.
Yes.
All right. It has been a busy week. Busy week. We have coming up, so obviously Nashville Saturday. We are going to figure out the Twitter Spaces. We will let you guys know. Be sure to check in Twitter. You know, you'll see it. We'll kind of determine what we're going to do with Twitter Spaces. Our player ratings video will be coming out early next week. So as usual, after the game, you guys hit us up. Let us know who you want us to rate with our super scientific ratings board analysis.
I lost my dry erase marker, by the way, when I was moving, so I have to find it before Saturday.
And he said that. And I had a whole thing planned for this episode where I was gonna say, hey, we're gonna do player ratings for the Open Cup, and I was just gonna put a 0, and I can't find my marker. So his marker kidnapping
somewhere
came
in this
over to my
place.
marker.
So I'll look for it after the show probably, and hopefully we'll find it before Sunday. My super scientific dry erase marker. But yeah, our normal show is back next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Tommy will be back as well, and hopefully we're talking about a win against Nashville. Again, we'll be previewing a really big match against Inter Miami and Joseph Martinez. So stay tuned for that. And again, Tony Anand is our next patrons only episode guest, so we'll get him in on next week. We'll tweet out the link as soon as we have the interview up. Again, that's not for patrons only, so sign up at patreon.com/scarves and spikes to get access to that and a lot of other great things that are available for patrons. Also, like and subscribe to us on YouTube, and of course subscribe to our podcast feed on the Atlanta Soccer Podcast Network. Just search for that on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All the good places.
All the good places.
All the good places. And if you are a fellow Atlanta United 2 sicko, and hopefully you want to see a decent game as opposed to a terrible game at Fifth Third Bank Stadium, The Twos are playing Sunday. They're playing Philadelphia Union 2, which is not going to be an easy match by any means. But they are playing, and it's going to be at 6 on MLSNextPro.com, so you can check that out as well if you just need a fix on Sunday. It's fun to watch. Fun to watch some of these young guys that hopefully can get back to winning ways after a really crappy day yesterday. Yeah. And yeah, Brian, talking about are we sure GG plays Saturday? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I asked you to give your.
I said it. Earlier. I think so, but I don't know.
Okay.
It's just to me, it's a coin toss.
All right.
So I say he does. I want him to tie Taylor Twellman, but I could also see them being very, very, very conservative with him because that's now 2 matches, 2 weeks in a row where he's gone out with a hamstring issue.
Yeah.
But
hopefully
I'll say yes, Brian. He's playing Saturday. He's getting a start.
Yes. I agree.
All right. It's been fun, guys. We appreciate it. For Sydney Hunt, I am Tyler Pilgrim. Y'all make sure you're following us as well, ATL Pilgrim and at SH Wrights. And Tommy, who is not here tonight, he's got some NFL stuff going on.
Bryce Young drafted #1 overall by the Carolina Panthers, by the way.
There you go. There you go. Follow Tommy as well, Tommy ATL96, and subscribe, all of the good stuff over on YouTube, Twitch, and Patreon. And we will see you guys this weekend for the ratings episode.
So long.
Have a good one.